Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please pay attention as we advise on the guidelines for today's virtual session. This session will be recorded. Please identify yourself clearly by ensuring your display name is correct. To change your display name, you can click Participants in the Zoom menu, click More next to your name, or click your name if you're using your mobile phone. Click Rename and then type in your name. During the presentations, you are invited to use the chat box for questions, comments, or to request clarifications. Your mics will be muted unless you're invited to speak. There will be an opportunity to ask questions today, verbally. Thus, when invited to do so, use the raise hand icon. Then wait until you're called to speak before unmuting your mic. Please remember to lower your hand after to locate the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen. To locate the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen, please select Reactions, or if you are logged in from your phone, at the bottom of the screen, you can select More, and then you can select the raise hand icon. The use of your webcam today is optional. It is suggested that you use a headset to reduce the background noise and to allow others to hear you clearly. Copies of today's presentations and links to the toolkit will be sent to all participants who have registered for the session via email. Links to the toolkit and or the handouts will be placed in the chat box today. Finally, a copy of the agenda will be placed in the chat box. We're about to commence the community-based tourism toolkit session, national sensitization session, hosted by the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts. I am Candice Coker, your moderator for this morning's proceedings. Our session is being live streamed via the ministry's YouTube channel today. Ms. Evie Nlovu, Program Manager, Europe, Middle East and Africa, Planetara. Ms. Amanda Charles, Sustainable Tourism Specialist, Caribbean Tourism Organization. Mr. Wayne Elliot, Technical Coordinator, Innovation and Cluster Development Projects, Compete Caribbean Partnership Facility. Mr. Courtney Lindsay, Project Development Officer, Compete Caribbean Partnership Facility. Mrs. Thorn Mora Quinones, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts. Mr. Clifford Hamilton, Chairman of the Board, Tourism Trinidad Limited. Presidents of Community-Based Tourism Organizations and Community-Based Organizations. Chairman and Chief Executive Officers of organizations and other similar entities, members of community-based organizations, community organizations, non-governmental organizations, regional corporations, government ministries and state agencies, and private sector organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We would like to get our program started with a pre-recorded piece by Ms. Jewel Cartagai-Smith, one of our talented staff members who will provide us an appetizer to our session this morning.
Community-based tourism. Just what is that exactly? Well, clearly, it must have something to do with communities. After all, it's right there and plain to see. Just take a look around our sweet TNT. Our land stretched out like an intricate tapestry. Our seemingly endless diversity, extending from people and culture right down to our flora and fauna. So if it's community you're after, we have that in droves with splendor. Up next is based. It's probably not the same base you'd find in a panyard, although we have that too bad. No, This base is more like the roots in a bamboo patch, like the cathedral up in Chagaramas. Roots that don't just sit on the surface, like some kind of lip service. Not just situated, but fully integrated. Roots that tap into the reservoir of the people, sustained by their passion and commitment to their community. Now that is true authenticity. Finally, we come to this notion of tourism, where we invite people to experience our destination, to experience our food, our music, our traditions, to be awed by our breathtaking vistas and ecosystems, to be touched by the sincerity of our warm welcome. Community-based tourism. Much more than a nice term or phrase, but the vision to which we now turn our gaze. Together we've aspired, together we will achieve, together we will transform our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carter-Smith. Your rendition provided us with a snapshot of community-based tourism. At this point, we invite Mrs. Simone Thornmora Quinones, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, to deliver the welcome remarks.
Ms. Evie Nolovo, Program Manager, Europe, Middle East and Africa, Planetera. Ms. Amanda Charles, Sustainable Tourism Specialist, Caribbean Tourism Organization. Mr. Wayne Elliot, Technical Coordinator, Innovation and Cluster Development Projects, Complete Caribbean Partnership Facility. Mr. Courtney Lindsay, Project Development Officer, Complete Caribbean Partnership Facility. Mr. Clifford Hamilton, Chairman of the Board, Tourism Trinidad Limited, Presidents of Community-Based Tourism Organizations and Community-Based Organizations, Chairman and Chief Executive Officers of organizations and other similar entities, members of CBOs, NGOs, regional corporations, government ministries, and state enterprises and private sector organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I wish to extend a warm welcome to each of you. And my understanding is it's almost, I think it's about over 90 persons who are online at this point. So I want to really welcome each of you to the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, Virtual Community-Based Tourism Toolkit, National Sensitization Session. According to the Caribbean Tourism Organization, community-based tourism is a collaborative approach to tourism in which community members exercise control through active participation in appraisal, development management, and/or ownership, either whole or in part, of enterprises that deliver socioeconomic benefits to community members, conserve natural and cultural heritage resources, and add value to the experiences of local and foreign visitors. Thus, our presence here today signals our ongoing commitment to sustainable tourism development, particularly at the community level. We have a shared a shared vision and common goal, which is aimed at improving the visitor experience within our communities, the quality of their product offerings, and sustaining livelihoods throughout the destination. This session advances the ministry's efforts in CBT development, building upon previous training initiatives and the hosting of a workshop earlier this year. The thrust towards community-based tourism is fueled by collaborative effort with the CTO, the Caribbean Tourism Organization. The Premier Regional Tourism Association and its partner organization, Compete Caribbean Partnership Facility. Together, they are responsible for the creation of the CBT Toolkit, which is the focus of today's session. This toolkit aims to enable more micro, small, and medium enterprises, particularly female-owned community-based tourism business, to generate more revenue from tourism. The purpose of today's session is to raise awareness among community-based tourism stakeholders about the tools available to develop and package your products and services in alignment with best practices. The CBT toolkit consists of 5 tools. These are a tourism asset inventory, a CBT diagnostic tool, a CBT enterprise handbook, the Euromonitor's consumer research conducted in the American market, and CBT profiles. Awareness of these tools is the first step towards improving the quality of Trinidad and Tobago's CBT product offerings. Thereafter, the next step focuses on developing market and export-ready products that are capable of consistently meeting industry standards. Ladies and gentlemen, the ministry envisions a holistic plan to develop and grow the CBT niche in Trinidad and Tobago, one that will provide positive economic, socio-cultural, and environmental benefits to communities. I wish to share with you that the ministry has developed 2 strategic documents which embrace and support community-based tourism. Our recently revised National Tourism Policy 2021 to 2030 identifies a regional approach to tourism development and advocates for community-based tourism groups to have a level of autonomy in determining, in managing, and executing their unique tourism product offerings. To facilitate this process, knowledge enhancement, along with tools that provide support, will afford CBT stakeholders the opportunity to assess, list, develop, and promote their products and services within the overall framework for the development of tourism. In addition, the draft community-based tourism sub-policy identifies key considerations for the development of CBT, including community involvement and participation, capacity building and training, role of women, development of micro, small, and medium enterprises, investment and financial resources, and health, safety, and security. The workshop will therefore serve as a key conduit which can contribute to the achievement of the aforementioned areas. Ladies and gentlemen, as we navigate through this global pandemic, we must leverage our creativity, seize every opportunity, and use every tool in our arsenal to build back stronger and better. Together, we must stake our claim as formidable, resilient competitors in the post-COVID-19 tourism landscape. In closing, let me assure you that the Ministry of Tourism, Culture, and the Arts of my sweet Trinidad and Tobago will continue to collaborate with you, our stakeholders, as we seek to develop a sustainable, robust tourism in Trinidad and Tobago, one that provides benefits to all our citizens. I wish you an enlightening and productive session. Thank you.
Thank you, P.S. Thornmora Quinones, for those insightful perspectives and for sharing the ministry's position as it seeks to support community-based tourism development in Trinidad and Tobago. I now invite Mr. Wayne Elliot, Technical Coordinator, Innovation and Cluster Development Projects, Compete Caribbean Partnership Facility, to provide remarks on behalf of his organization. Mr. Elliot.
Thank you. Good morning, one and all. I'm Wayne Elliot from the Compete Caribbean team, and I bring you greetings from Barbados. And it's a pleasure to be a part of this workshop hosted by the government of as the PS termed it, her sweet Trinidad and Tobago. Adopting all protocols have already been established. It is really my pleasure to provide brief remarks on the behalf of Compete Caribbean and its donors, the Inter-American Development Bank, the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, or FCDO, Global Affairs Canada, and the Caribbean Development Bank. Compete Caribbean supports the region in increasing the productivity and innovation levels of Caribbean firms towards increasing the private sector's contribution to economic growth. Our specific objectives are: 1, to support firms to grow, compete, innovate, and enter new sectors and markets, and to promote an environment that enables innovation and growth. For us, it's really about innovation. At Compete, we recognize that community-based tourism is a powerful channel for sustainable and inclusive economic development in the Caribbean. CBT, as we term it, enables greater market opportunities for a broad base of local entrepreneurs, which in turn creates employment opportunities. Moreover, our 2019 research, which was conducted by Euromonitor, suggests that there's many value addition propositions that present themselves as an increasing number of tourists seek new CBT experiences. And I'm delighted that Trinidad is now taking this path towards the further development of its tourism product. Notably, these visitors are willing to pay more for such authentic and customized opportunities. And I think, the world is your oyster. We're seeing a lot more tourists from around the world looking for very new and exciting opportunities in the Caribbean space. As such, CBT represents an opportunity for regional tourism stakeholders to further diversify, and in the case of Trinidad, to further develop their tourism product offerings. This is definitely worthy of special considerations as we chart a post-COVID-19 non-petroleum era of growth and development. Today, we're delighted to be a part of the national workshop being hosted on the Caribbean Community-Based Tourism Toolkit. The toolkit was prepared by Compete Caribbean in collaboration with the CTO, and it has benefited from the input of a wide array of practitioners and stakeholders within and outside of the region. We utilize the insights from tourism specialists, successful CBT initiatives around the globe and in the region, as well as best practice guidance. The toolkit seeks to present tools that CBT operators and business support organizations can use as they seek to develop, promote, and improve their businesses. Essentially, it aims to share and guide practitioners through how to start, operate, and promote a CBT business in the Caribbean, with a focus on how to enhance and develop experiences and products. However, it must be understood that the toolkit is not a be-all and end-all for successful entry and operation within the CBT space. The toolkit does not provide solutions specific to all use cases, but offers the necessary guidance to optimize your chances of success by way of making informed decisions upfront. For CBT operators and entrepreneurs eager to enter the CBT space, we will be launching a business pitch competition in partnership with the UE Open Campus in January 2022. This business pitch competition seeks to incentivize diversification within or new entry or formalization of CBT enterprises within the Caribbean. We're still formalizing our support, but we've earmarked just about $6,000 in sponsored support for participants of CBT business pitches. We're also having conversations with additional partners who are interested in this opportunity. For all of you looking for your next opportunity, I encourage you to try community-based tourism. In addition, at Compete, we're preparing yet another call that will open in the first quarter of 2022. This time, we're seeking innovative firms that are interested in increasing their use of digital technologies and are operating either within the blue economy industries or were deemed essential during the COVID-19 period. This support will be referred to as technology extension services. I encourage you to follow our social media channels, our newsletter, or our website for more details. We can be reached at www.competecaribbean.org. Finally, I wish to reiterate our gratitude to the government and people of Trinidad and Tobago for partnering with us to deliver on our mandate. Thank you for your time and your patience, and we wish you the greatest success in not only your tourism, but your CBT specific endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elliot. In her opening remarks, the PS advised on 2 strategic documents that the ministry has established to support CBT development. To provide more details on these, I now invite Mr. Edward C. Leetang, Tourism Coordinator at the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, to address the topic, CBT, National Overarching Development Framework. Please note that if you have any questions as it relates to Mr. Leetang's presentation, you can place these in the chat box. Our team will monitor these and respond accordingly via the chat box. Eddie?
Hi, good morning, everyone. That's good. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be part of this exciting initiative that has been produced by the Ministry of Tourism in collaboration with its key stakeholders that were mentioned before. So my duty today is to just talk a little bit about what the ministry has done in terms of an overarching development framework that is laser focused on community-based tourism. So let me start by just putting you back into that whole framework of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now, one of the things that we must mention is that coming to the SDG 2030, there were some precursor initiatives that took place, and that would have been Agenda 21. We all know about that Rio Summit in 1992, and also the Millennium Development Goals. So one of them spoke quickly about the environment, and the other one was more in line with human development. Now, the Sustainable Development Goals, I'm looking at the combination of both of these. When we were looking at, when we were undergoing the whole development of our community-based tourism initiatives and so forth, we wanted to ensure that we had aligned all our policies, all our policy statements, everything were crafted in alignment with the SDGs. And one of the 17 of them that we looked at was number 8, decent work and economic growth, because we felt that this is what speaks with communities, that we want to build the communities to ensure that work and economic growth go hand in hand, so they become the beneficiaries of the natural and built assets within their communities. We looked at the different targets you're seeing there, 8.2, 8.3, and 8.9. So 8.2 is looking at achieving higher levels of economic productivity through diversification. And we know that tourism is one means through which we can have diversification and in which we can bring in the revenues that we so need, and also create employment. So with that, there's also be technological upgrading and innovation, looking through a focus on high value added and labor intensive sectors. So that particular word, high value added, that's very important. We have to ensure that whatever we have to provide to the visitor, it must be at a certain level in which they can say, okay, I put in my X amount of dollars from it, and I'm getting something that is worthwhile, something that I cherish, something I know the community puts in within the effort to produce. 8.3 looks at promoting development-oriented policies that support productive activities, decent job creation and entrepreneurship. And that's a big thing for communities. We don't want the communities to just be employees, but we want them to be employers. We want them to be entrepreneurs. So we have to put things in place to ensure that this happens. And 8.9 looks at what happens by 2030, revising and implementing policies to promote sustainable tourism. And we're saying that it should be creating jobs and promoting the local culture and products. And you will be hearing more and more of this. Because when a visitor looks at any destination and he or she wishes to come to that destination, they want to find out, how can I be immersed in your culture? How can I become part of what you are experiencing for yourselves on a daily basis? How can you transfer that to me? So I feel like one of you. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. One of the other documents that we had looked at was the National Development Strategy. It's a document that the Trinidad and Tobago have been looking at to show that pathway for the future transformation of Trinidad and Tobago into a developed country. And within that document, there are so many different guiding principles, different thematic areas, all heading towards that sustainable growth and development and optimizing the quality of life for us as citizens. There are 5 thematic areas that the NDS has. Theme 1 speaks about putting people first. Theme 2, delivering good governance and service excellence. Theme 3, improving productivity through quality infrastructure and transportation. Theme 4, building globally competitive businesses. And Theme 5, placing the environment at the center of social and economic development. Now, CBT can work throughout any of these thematic areas, but we wanted to just focus on Theme 4, building globally competitive businesses, because we want to ensure that our businesses, our entrepreneurs, can really compete globally. And by that, they must be adhering to certain standards. They must have market-ready and export-ready products. And that's what we want to focus on. So the key activities that we have within that is conformance to international standards. That's the basis through international trade. So when you see that something is aligned to a particular standard, you have the confidence in that product and that you are using and consuming. And also, we want to ensure other economic sectors and related sectors are also included. The other thing that we're looking at is the National Tourism Policy, the 2021-2030 critical areas of impact. We mentioned, and you have heard the PS speak about different areas of impact and the different documents that we have to guide the tourism sector, and one of which was the National Tourism, or is the National Tourism Policy. And there are several areas, critical areas that we looked at when we were developing this National Tourism Policy. So you're seeing it there. The first one speaks to regional development. And it was a new approach that was taken by the committee that developed it, in that if you have the assets residing within the communities in these different regions, then they should be the beneficiaries, and they should also be able to manage those assets within that community. The second one we look at is land use planning and spatial development. And we're saying that there should be areas designated within the communities for tourism development. And that one of the ways in which that can be done is to designate certain areas as tourism zones within those communities. So that's something that the policy looked at. Then tourism product development, as I mentioned before, what it is that the visitor is coming for. He or she wants to experience your product, your service. He or she wants to be wowed. He or she wants to say, wait, these people and them were very creative and innovative. I didn't realize that this could have happened with this product and service. So that's something that it looked at, ensuring that the tourism product development is well produced and it's market ready, export ready. And the toolkit is going to speak a little bit more about that. We also went into the superstructure, the whole thing about accommodation. We know that that is one of the biggest contributors to revenues for the government through taxation and through employment and so forth, and different taxes that come along with that. So we have to ensure that within communities, there are also accommodation for the visitor, and ensuring that it is at the level that the visitor wishes or requires. So we delve deeply into the accommodation structure for communities as well as for the outlying areas. Heritage is also something very important. We boast about that. We used to talk about all different cultural experiences that we as Trinidad and Tobago has. What we look at, and other people like about Trinidad and Tobago is Pan, and you're seeing that icon there. We are known for that, but they're much, much more. Because of our multi-ethnicity and plurality in our country, we are able to offer so much more. Events and festivals, again, linking with heritage as well. So many events and festivals that we are promoting right here in the Twin Island Republic. So that's something that the policy looked at. One of the key things we're looking at is digitalizing the tourism sector. And I know that when we speak about what happened with COVID-19 and the pandemic, there's a lot of fallout, economic fallout and so forth. But one of the things that happened with COVID-19 is catalyzes the digitalization of the tourism sector. People wanted contactless arrangements, whether it's for payment, whether it's in service and so forth. So it actually, there was a benefit. Things that would have taken, let's say, 2 or 3 years in the long run happened within 6 months. So that's something that we looked at as well in the policy. Education and training, we must have an educated professional workforce. That is something that would give us a competitive advantage. And you'd see throughout the region, we have different universities and different institutions that are supplying that, that education and the training for the young persons and the persons who are interested in this field. We did speak about standards and quality, and we are very closely linked with the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards and with the Caribbean Regional Organization for Standards and Quality CrossQ. We also look at providing input for any standards that come out, whether it's internationally ISO standards as well. So this is a big part of the sector. If you have standards, if you have the quality, it's going to reduce the risk of being sued because it didn't meet the expectations of the visitor. So we have to be careful about that. Climate resilience, disaster risk management, COP26, just recently out of that whole conversation and global conversation, there were so many different things that came out of it, and we know we are paying particular attention to that. As I would, more of this is going to come out in the other presentations. Marketing, research, and planning. Of course, we have to ensure that if we're going to market our products and so forth, we have to look at what's trending. We have to ensure that we are laser focused in terms of where we're producing to market. Where are our source markets? Maybe we need to look at new markets. Maybe the whole digitalization of the tourism sector will increase the different choices for new markets. Just going into now, so what we have done, we have also created a draft community-based tourism sub-policy. We call it a sub-policy because it's coming out from the National Tourism Policy, which I just mentioned. And there were several different principles that surrounded this policy. So we're looking at community ownership. One of the biggest things that we have to ensure is that whatever assets residing in the community, they are owned and managed by the community. We want to ensure that they are the beneficiaries, and we keep saying that we want meaningful participation, meaningful contribution. That's what we want. Sustainability, it cannot be one-off. We have to ensure that what we are putting in place, our generations that come afterwards are able to benefit from it, and even more. Respect for local culture. We don't want to come inside and disrupt what the traditions, the culture, and all these things that have been existing for some time. We want to celebrate it, respect it, and put it out there for the consumption of the visitor in a respectable manner, one in which they can share and immerse themselves in it. Education and awareness. So we speak about education and awareness, and we understand how important that is for any type of policy, ensuring that persons understand this is how we're going to move to be able to produce, able to service, to able to let the consuming public understand what we are producing and the level in which we are doing that. Community benefits, like I said before, it must benefit the community. We cannot go into the community and carry things inside there and then take it back out, and the community is at a loss. or it doesn't benefit from it. So we have to ensure community benefits become one of the pillars under which we develop community-based tourism initiatives. The social well-being, like I said, the livelihoods of the persons, the coming together of the community, the whole nexus of having the different persons who support the communities and the businesses, all of these things are one of the contributory principles. And capacity building. If we want to elevate the community, we have to ensure that they have the knowledge, the skill set, and they have the capacity to do those things. So that's what we're looking at. So the draft committee, there were 5 goals in it. I'm just going to very quickly go through it because I know time is of the essence. So the 5 goals, we wanted to engage and empower the local communities in the decision-making process. That's important, and we did mention that. We're also looking at the preservation of the assets within the communities. Remember, we were saying that in terms of the consumption of it, we have to protect it as well. We have to restore it. We have to celebrate this. This is what is within the communities. This is what they are offering the visitor. We also have to ensure that an enabling environment is stimulated. So what we have to ensure is that the products and services that we have within that community, that the linkages that are established. We have to nurture those linkages because that's how this product is going to provide what we expected, the outcomes that we desired, can only be achieved when we have the different components, the different actors within the community, all contributing equally to this. We're also looking at the promotion of health, safety, and security, and COVID-19 really brought this to the effect. How are we protecting our environment? How are we promoting the environment? Ensuring safety and security to the visitors. And we did develop a COVID-19 protocols for the tourism sector, and it's out there for people to see, and we have it in all of our different social media, etc. And the thing that we have to be looking at as well, you see that part, we see develop strategic partnerships with the private sector, that is huge. And that's why we have invited them to be part of this initiative. So you'll hear a little bit more about how they can become a part of the whole gamut in terms of contributing to community-based tourism. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you very much. There's so much more I could have spoken about, but during the course of today's session, there'll be opportunities for engagement. So I thank you, and I pass it back on to Candice. Candice, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Eddie. The ministry certainly has some clear goals as it relates to the development of this important tourism niche. We remind the audience that if you have any questions in relation to this presentation, you can place them in the chat box and our team will respond accordingly. How will the ministry's goals be implemented? We invite Mr. Cliff Hamilton, Chairman of the Board of Tourism Trinidad Limited, to provide further clarification on his presentation, CBT development, perspectives, and plans. Once again, please note that if you have any questions as it relates to this presentation, you can place these in the chat box. Mr. Hamilton.
Good morning. All protocols being observed, we're going to go straight into the presentation. And we want to thank you for the opportunity to share some aspects of what we've been doing with regard to community-based tourism on the island of Trinidad. Okay, it began with the approach, and the genesis for this started with the revised national tourism policy, 2021 to 2030, which really brought about a huge shift in terms of our focus with regard to putting more emphasis on communities. The fact that the island of Trinidad is not a typical Caribbean island meant that our development had a different form, shape from the rest of the Caribbean islands. So as a result of that, we got a lot of development in the interior of the island. So we've got these communities with incredible experiences that they can afford a visitor. Simply because of the way the island had developed over time. What we've decided to do with the National Tourism Policy is to come up with what we call regions. And there are really 6 regions, including Tobago. But for the purpose of this, we're going to focus on the island of Trinidad. And we started with Region 1, which is the sort of northwestern part of the island, which takes in really the major municipalities in terms of population centers on the island. Diego Martin, Port of Spain, Tunapuna, Piarco, Rima, San Juan, Laventil. And we looked at what were the unique selling propositions for these areas. And the city of Port of Spain has a novel sort of experience that it gives you. It has nightlife, it has a lot of culture. It probably has all of the, what we would consider all of the things that we promote as being Trinidad and Tobago for the most part is home and resides within the city of Port of Spain. All of the iconic buildings, all the things that we considered iconic, from Queen's Park, Queen's Hall, the Oval, the Magnificent Seven, all of those things, which are some of them, most of them are man-made, reside within the city. And the city basically looked at offering meetings, conferences, and exhibitions. That's really what the city's good at. It's a city, and that's what cities do. We have supporting niche, nightlife, environment, culture, heritage, festivals, and events, bird watching, and some medical tourism and educational tourism. So we have Region 2, which basically was the Eastern Providence, which took in Sandy Grande, Mayaro, Rio Claro. And the unique selling proposition for these areas basically were, those areas are mostly untouched, natural environment, incredible beauty, and most of them borders the water. And basically there's a lot of bird watching, turtle watching, hiking, caves, mud volcanoes. Supporting niche basically have to do with beach and just some resort development and culture. But again, very distinct from Region 1. All right, and I hope that we are basically Region 3, which is the central part of the island, takes in Chaguanas, Cuba, Tabaquí, Calparo. Now this region is unique in the sense that we probably have the finest sporting facilities in the hemisphere located in this particular part of Trinidad. World-class facilities for cycling, dive training, swimming, cricket, athletics, it's all there. And so really and truly, this particular part of the island focuses on sports tourism in a way that we probably have never done before. And mainly we're looking at training. The facilities are designed for training. And there are some supporting niches in this area that have to do with culture and heritage, but the primary focus for this region really is that of sports training as it relates to tourism. Region 4, which is the southwestern part of the island, basically takes in Pinal de Bay, Point Fortin, Princestown, San Fernando, and Siparia. The unique selling proposition here is rich culture and history. So the core niche here, basically, we're focusing on culture and heritage, which is supported by culinary tourism, festivals, events, and there are some beaches in that part of the island as well, and potential for some sort of small resort development. Region number 5, which is the peninsula known as Chaguaramas, former US military base, deep water harbors, deep water facilities, a non-residential area. Distinct coastal and marine experience can be afforded there. And really and truly, the core niche for this particular part of the island has to do with marine nautical tourism, because the infrastructure is there. And it's the supporting niche have to do with eco, soft adventure tourism, some nightlife and agro-tourism. There are very interesting facilities there. There are 2 beaches, there's a golf course, the hiking, the butterflies, the bamboo cathedral. So it's a very interesting and diverse part of the island in terms of what it can offer a visitor, and basically from a community base, extremely strong. Execution, how will this be achieved? And Eddie spoke a lot to this in terms of some of the stuff that's being done as a result of the sub-tourism policy that relates to the island. Community leadership, critical, absolutely. I think the most important aspect of this is the leadership at the community level, because the community must own it. Because as a result of that ownership, they're going to basically be looking at placemaking. It's just not they're making the place. The brand begins with people. It begins in the community. We would not have a brand unless the community agrees that this is what they want to be. So the community has to support the development, the enhancement, and the community must have the capacity to do that. And that's part of what we're going to do in terms of helping them to develop that capacity, administratively and otherwise. And then we have to have community partnerships, because really and truly, they cannot do it by themselves. And those partnerships can come from other private sector entities, other NGOs, other international support agencies. The benefits to the community. There's some economic benefits, environmental benefits, and socio-cultural benefits. We all are seeking to reduce poverty. We all are seeking for employment generation and income generation, both for the citizenry and as well as for the state. And environmentally, we're looking at how we can conserve and preserve the resources in those communities, encourage community beautification and sustainability. And then the socio-cultural, the decentralization of the tourism industry as community makes decisions. Historically, tourism was basically managed from the capital city. And now what we're doing is we're decentralizing the management of it, which gives it sustainability through the ownership and the management of it. And then also pride in the preservation of the community culture and heritage to give the community an opportunity to really focus in on what they own and what's theirs and what defines them as a place. Improve standard of living and quality of life, especially among women and youth. Improve local access to infrastructure, as well as community social facilities and service, and the diversification of the product offering. We have an opportunity to really present to the world probably the most diversified tourism experience in the region. So what are our services and products? Accommodation and the role of Airbnb. Airbnb is going to play a critical role in our development going forward, because what it allows us to develop inventory without billing large hotels. Because the inventory is spread throughout communities. So persons in those communities could actually share their existing accommodation, particularly those people who are empty nesters, all right? So the community, they can experience the direct benefit of tourism in a very real way. Then there's the transportation. I mean, for those of you who know Trinidad, Trinidad is a very large island. And one of the things with moving around is this need for people to feel secure. So we're looking at the role of ride-sharing services so that people are secure in moving from point A to point B. And then we're looking at tourism services that's provided by TTL, which has to do really with market support, product authenticity. How do we show that all of our product is really authentic and not contrived? And then adherence to standards. So the key activities that we're looking to embrace: provisions of capacity building, right? For small tourism enterprises, which we put in place an organization to deal with that. Improvement of the quality of accommodation product in the communities to access to tourism accommodation upgrade program. And this is where the state have basically put funds behind improving the accommodation. Enhance community-based tourism through the development of quality-centric and innovative tourism packages. Because once we basically have developed and enhanced the product, it allows us to do very innovative stuff with packaging, particularly as it relates to stuff like culture and cuisine. Upgrade the customer service skills of tourism groups, provide marketing support for communities involved in community-based tourism. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Tourism Trinidad Limited is poised to implement this regional development approach through defined actions. Ladies and gentlemen, we now turn our attention to the support being provided by our regional partners and the key reason for this event. We wish to hand over the screen to Ms. Amanda Charles, Sustainable Tourism Specialist at the Caribbean Tourism Organization, who will present on the CTO Community-Based Tourism Program and key aspects of the toolkit. At the end of her presentation, we will host a brief Q&A. So as you listen, you can make a note of any questions you may have, and at the end of her presentation, we will facilitate that. Ms. Charles.
Good morning. I extend greetings from the Caribbean Tourism Organization and really would like to congratulate the Ministry of Tourism of Trinidad and Tobago and all of your partners as you embark on this thrust to promote community-based tourism in the Twin Island Republic. I'm very pleased to participate in this event and to share some of our insights as well as the tools we have developed in collaboration with our partner, the Compete Caribbean Partnership Facility, to support your efforts in promoting community-based tourism. So with that said, and all protocols being observed, I will share my screen and delve into the presentation. Okay, so firstly, I would just like to present an overview of the context of the presentation. So I will present some of the definitions and guiding principles of community-based tourism as conceptualized by the CTO. I will present an overview of the community-based tourism toolkits, highlight some of the activities, achievements, but also upcoming initiatives related to the CTO's community-based tourism program. And lastly, touch on some market trends, opportunities, and recommendations, particularly in light of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So in 2016, CTO conceptualized a framework for community-based tourism. And that included some background research in terms of what was ongoing and looking at a holistic definition that, you know, we would roll out in terms of the Caribbean's approach, how we would recognize community-based tourism activities to mainstream the concept across all member countries. So this is defined as a collaborative approach to tourism in which community members exercise control through active participation in the appraisal, development, management, and/or ownership of enterprises that delivers socioeconomic benefits to community members, conserves natural and cultural heritage resources, and adds value to the experiences of local and foreign visitors. And I think this definition is very well aligned to the draft sub-policy that has been produced by the Ministry of Tourism of Trinidad and Tobago, and I really want to applaud your efforts in that regard. So one thing that is very important to note is that CBT entails tourism activities in a community, as well as goods and services supplied to the industry by one or more community members. And when we look again at some of the guiding principles, we can consider then, what do we mean by community? So certainly a community is a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common, such as a shared belief, interest, and/or goals. However, it is important to note that it is not always geographical placement that defines the community, and related opportunities then for community-based tourism. So that common denominator or the common factor that defines the community could be lifestyle choice, an ethnic or social group, and or spiritual practice. And we see that, for example, with the Rastafari community in Jamaica, that offer Rastafari Indigenous Village, RIV, that is a very successful CBT initiative in Jamaica. In Guyana, Belize, and Dominica, we have indigenous communities offering community tourism experiences, as well as the Maroons in Jamaica, which would be more of an ethnic group. So the process to develop the criteria for the types of initiatives or experiences that we would classify as CBT was done from a bottom-up approach. In 2018, CTO partnered with the Compete Caribbean Partnership Facility. We contracted a consultant to produce, to assist in producing this criteria. And we also did, I think, 4 site visits to Jamaica, Belize, Guyana, and Dominica to meet with community tourism stakeholders, to consult as it relates to the definition and criteria for CBT, and to gain their inputs to develop this criteria, which we mainstream across the region. So as it relates to activities that can be classified as CBT, we have a list of 6 criteria, 3 of which are sort of mandatory or desirable, most desirable, and some optional criteria, 3 optional. So Caribbean businesses and activities shall be classified as community-based tourism by meeting criteria A, B, and C, which I will go through briefly, and at least one of the 3 criteria named in D through F. So certainly, given that it is community-based tourism, it is important that the activity or initiative operates in one of the 8 sectors of the tourism industry, or the 8 subsectors of tourism, whether it's an accommodation facility based in a community site or attraction, food and beverage experiences, transport, again, I heard mention of this, tourism services, tour guiding, for example, the travel trade, adventure tourism, events and conferences, being the 8 broad subsectors identified by CTO. B, that the initiative or CBT is owned and or operated by a community member, whether it be an individual, family, group, organization, or a combination. The operative words here being owned and or operated to ensure community engagement and benefit. And that leads me then to the 3rd criteria, that the enterprise generates the benefits for the community, either directly to community members, such as through employment, the purchase of goods and services, or indirectly through contributions, assistance that helps to address broad community needs. I heard mention, well, in fact, there was a question as it relates to volunteer opportunities, donations, and community partnerships. In terms of the optional criteria, it is desirous that the activity or initiative involves direct interaction or provides an opportunity for direct interaction between and visitors. Or B, that it supports sharing and preservation of local indigenous culture and heritage. And finally, that it provides positive economic, social, environmental, and cultural benefits, and is conducive to conservation and responsible management of the community assets. And in the presentation that we just heard, these were some of the objectives articulated as it relates to the policy approach for CBT to be adopted by the Twin Island Republic. So I will move now into some of the main niche market definitions that we identified again through the community site visits that we engaged in. So certainly there is an opportunity for rural tourism, and that is tourism linked to and or includes rural communities. That is certainly true in the context of Trinidad and Tobago. Indigenous tourism, there are pockets of indigenous communities in Trinidad and Tobago. And again, it is opportune to have or offer CBT experiences that are centered around these indigenous communities. Again, it is very important that the activity promoted is owned, operated by, and or managed by members of the indigenous communities. We have great examples of this ongoing in Guyana, certainly Belize and Dominica. Culture and heritage tourism, mention was made of this, a very important niche that can be explored in the context of CBT. And you will find that it is a low-hanging fruit for communities to center the experiences they offer based on their local, the sharing of their local culture and heritage. And that could be, you know, sites and attractions, artifacts, activities, traditional healings, for example. And the fourth area, the area of agrotourism, which involves any agricultural based operation or activity linked to tourism. And we have, you know, the whole concept of food and beverage experiences, you know, home visits, farm stays, farm visits, etc. All of these would fall under the whole agrotourism niche. But the idea is to promote, sustain, and support local livelihoods, protect our very valuable social and cultural assets and traditions, as well as the natural and cultural heritage resources of local communities. So some CBT activities that were observed, I believe that these are ongoing in Trinidad and certainly Tobago, but it is some food for thought as you look to explore CBT development. So some types of activities, home visits, storytelling, homestays. In terms of food tourism, culinary experiences, in Barbados, for example, they've developed a very vibrant rum shop tour. They have also developed farm-to-table experiences across the region, including in Barbados, linked to rum tourism and a rum tourism experience. Diaspora tourism, particularly because a lot of members of the diaspora come home for festivals, and that could be religious festivals, certainly festivals like Carnival, but also community festivals. And we know that Tobago, for example, have a number of vibrant community-based festivals and experiences that, you know, persons across the region and certainly even in Trinidad would go to Tobago for that experience. The goat racing and other types of the traditional tourism products and experiences offered in Tobago. So that sort of also covers the festivals and events in the community context. I've noted here experiential tourism, and we want to highlight the importance of building out that experience. And the concept of experience speaks to participation as opposed to just onlooking. And we will touch as well on, you know, what is required given, you know, the need for social distancing protocols and other guidelines in the shadow of the COVID-19 pandemic. Nature-based experiences, particularly linked to wellness tourism, again, a very important niche with a lot of opportunities that can be developed. In some countries, we have rewilding, which is essentially offering visitors the opportunity to go into your nature spaces, national parks, rainforests, not only for hiking, but to reconnect and have an immersive nature experience. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of grounding, which is walking bare feet, and immense benefits in the whole idea of wellness. And incidentally, 2022 has been carded the Year of Wellness Tourism by the Caribbean Tourism Organization. So I will delve now into our work with Compete Caribbean as it relates to CBT development, including the community-based tourism toolkit. And just to highlight here some of the capacity building that has been offered to CTO and some of the benefits as well and opportunities extended to various member countries. So we started our partnership with a capacity enhancement plan that was offered to CTO, but also our member countries for training in the cluster concept, cluster facilitation and development. I touched as well on the CBT site visits to Belize, Guyana, Jamaica, but as well as Dominica, to input into the development of the CBT criteria, as well as the CBT toolkit. The CBT toolkit has been produced. You will hear much more about this, and the elements of the toolkit will be presented. In terms of capacity building to regional participants, a CBT masterclass was held in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in 2019, and representatives of CTO member countries were trained and sensitized to the elements of the CBT toolkit. Subsequently, there was a call for cluster proposals, and the 13 mutual member countries of CTO and Compete Caribbean were invited to submit cluster development proposals. And this was a competitive process. There were proposals submitted from, I believe, just Trinidad, not from Tobago, but stemming from that call for proposals, 3 cluster development plans were selected for funding. And that is Belize, Dominica, and the Bahamas. We also have an ongoing pilot project with Intimate Hotels Barbados, where we are exploring the development of a platform for online bookings and online payments. And the idea is to scale the results of this, and we hope it's something that can be replicated in other countries across the region. And an ongoing, a CBT business plan competition implemented in collaboration with UE, and this will be launched in January of 2022. So I would encourage the stakeholders in Trinidad and Tobago to look out for that and the opportunities in that context. So as it relates to the community-based tourism toolkit, 5 main tools were developed to support community tourism development, tourism assets inventory templates, as well as a CBT diagnostic tool to support enterprise development, particularly looking at MSMEs and their role and integration in the tourism experience at the community level. We have produced a CBT enterprise handbook, and we for product development, market research was done by an international consulting firm, Euromonitor, which assessed the demand and willingness to pay of US visitors for experiences that can be offered by Caribbean MSMEs in the context of CBT. And lastly, to support market development, a CBT profile template was produced, and CTO also maintains a database of CBT profiles, and that is supported by a map. And I will actually touch on this area of market development in my presentation. So CTO's community-based tourism program is centered around that area of supporting market development and also promoting use and implementation of the CBT toolkit to support enterprises and product development at the community level. The elements of the CTO's community-based tourism program entails supporting training and capacity building, such as we are doing now, and promoting the use of the assets inventory tool, the diagnostic, and the enterprise handbook. So to date, 5 countries have completed national workshops. I'm so pleased that we have partnered with Trinidad today, and in early January, we will be hosting a national workshop with the Tobago Office of Tourism. The second area looks at the supporting market access, which is important because you would have gone through and developed or produced or enhanced the CBT experiences. How then do you promote these experiences to visitors so they are aware? And to support this, the Caribbean Experiences Database will be hosted via the CTO website. We have a Google Map, which will be integrated as well into TripAdvisor. We have ongoing discussions in that regard. And we also have an ongoing partnership with Planetera, and we launched in November a Caribbean Community Tourism Network. And these 2 initiatives that will bring or foster regional and international partnerships is also an opportunity for market access and to support networking as well for broad capacity building. I want to touch on the CBT destination profile, which is an element of the toolkit. In my next slide, this essentially is an outline of the CBT community profile. Essentially, this would be completed by the community, certainly with the support of the Ministry of Tourism or the Trinidad and Tobago Tourism Authority, or at the level of the Tobago Tourism Agency. And essentially, it allows the community to identify its assets, its key assets, key tourism experiences, and that can support the development of a website. It can support, your social media platforms, but it really allows a clear identification of community tourism assets, experiences to support the experience. The basic information is required: the name of the community, location, interesting facts related to, for example, how the community got its name, some of the key authorings, languages, customs and traditions, the culture and heritage experiences, accommodation facilities, very important, etc. To date, 13 community destination profiles have been completed, and we are encouraging our other member countries, and we are available to support this. So, of course, for the representatives of Trinidad and Tobago at the sort of public sector level, I would encourage you to reach out to me next year to provide any support you need related to completing this form, identifying communities that that are more market ready, that you would want to work with to roll out community tourism experiences in the Twin Island Republic. My colleague Courtney will also touch a little bit in terms of where these tools are available online, both in terms of the CTO website, as well as Compete Caribbean. The toolkit was produced as a regional public good, and the elements of the toolkit are easily downloadable. I just wanted to highlight that. In terms of the CBT database, we have 8 and counting, and this is an example of just some of the communities that are listed via the database. And you can see in terms of the information we require, certainly the community name, the community experience, AdWords, or some catchphrases. What are some of the main CBT activities that are offered? Exploration or adventure, heritage, nature, wellness, indigenous tourism, water-based activities, nightlife, festivals, etc. We also look at the types of accommodations, whether there are no community accommodations, so it would be a day visit, a site visit that is offered. If there are accommodation facilities, are they rustic? Are they basic? Or, are they modern? What can visitors expect? Electricity, particularly in rural communities, in some of our destinations, there is limited electricity access, very important for visitors. Internet as well, and we have a growing opportunity related to digital nomads, family-based clusters related to that. Upfront, we would want visitors to know what is expected as it relates to internet access, and a huge concern remains security. Of course, the complete CBT profile would be hyperlinked that anyone could access for further information, as well as any social media, web pages, etc., that the country and or community may have. This is a screenshot of the CBT experiences map for the Caribbean, the Google map that I would have mentioned. And again, the aim is to continue to populate this map as we get more information from communities and our member countries. I would like to touch on, as I wind down this presentation, some considerations and key insights as it relates to COVID-19 recovery. Based on research done by UNWTO, we have some recommendations that communities as well as regional destinations should factor for tourism planning broadly, but also more specifically for community-based tourism. So we see that people are interested in longer stays, and this would be, of course, persons from our source markets. Given the protocols that are rapidly changing, that are frequently changing rather, and the arduous process of bookings and PCR tests, etc. required, it is noted that persons would like to stay longer in the destination when they arrive, as opposed to pre-pandemic. So we have, an increase by up to 11 days or more as at January 2021. And we think that this is a trend that will continue. There has been an increase in domestic tourism. I am also sure that this is a tourism experience in Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad has always had a very strong domestic tourism market, and certainly because of the COVID-19 restrictions and the shutdown, the national shutdown, we would have observed that a lot of the tourism product was being sort of engaged in by the local market. So this is an opportunity, I think, that should be fostered and should continue. And I know that a lot of Trinidadians tend to go to Tobago for, the nature-based and traditional or local experiences offered, but it would be good to see, Tobagonians also going across to Trinidad, and perhaps not just for Carnival that has been suspended, but other CBT experiences that can be produced and offered. Certainly close to nature, nature-based tourism. I spoke about wellness activities and experiences. And again, I would encourage you to develop that and to involve adjacent communities in whatever is produced, whether hiking experiences, can there be short-term visits to communities to experience the types of food, for example, that is offered. Family cluster activities, so the trend or the tendency for private vacation rentals as opposed to hotels. And at the public sector level, of course, governments have mandated, safe zones or safe hotels. And it really begs the question of how do we ensure that local communities that offer accommodation can also participate in the tourism experience. Augmented and virtual reality to enhance sites and attractions. So very important as we look to the future of tourism and how we tell our stories. And we have seen as well a number of international destinations using these digital type experiences to continue to continue to promote rather their destinations. So this is an opportunity for Trinidad and Tobago at a national level as a destination. And it is something I think should be explored even as you consider CBT. So certainly enhancing online presence at the level of the destination, at the level of communities is something that we encourage. If you're not online, you're not in business. And I made mention of the sharing economy and the Orange Economy festivals. We know that Carnival may be or has been suspended for another year, 2022. And again, are there protocols to foster local interaction and entrepreneurship in the shadow of the COVID-19 pandemic? The new normal has to be how we continue life as normal, how we continue to generate opportunities for visitor interaction and engagement, however, in the shadow of COVID-19. So I will end with some recommendations for the public sector and secondly, for the private sector. So as we consider CBT in the new normal, the role of the public sector, we should bear in mind that the well-being of the host community is paramount given the ongoing pandemic. It is important to adopt a bottom-up approach to tourism planning. I certainly hope that there was and that there continues to be local and community engagement in terms of the CBT policy, and whatever plan of action stems from the policy as it relates to community-based tourism. There is need also to support intersectoral linkages, agro-tourism, rural tourism, the arts and crafts sector, creative tourism. Are there incentives and disincentives to support and increase linkages with local industries? For example, buy local, support local campaigns. All of these are considerations for the public sector to foster social, cultural, equity, and inclusion at the level of the private sector or tourism businesses. Again, the importance of community consultation and engagement. It is also important to recognize and to see the community as partners and not competitors, and to move away from the all-inclusive concept and to encourage visitors to go out into communities and also to spend and support community enterprises. Intra-regional and local travel incentives. I mentioned, of course, domestic tourism. And as we look at continuing some of the incentives to support, locals to either stay at local hotels or to engage in, tourism sites and attractions, we think, local and intra-regional travel incentives provides an opportunity to mitigate seasonality and travel restrictions given COVID-19. And of course, because of the need for digitization of the tourism product and experience, there is need to train and upskill staff and to increase the use of ICTs, information communication technologies. So these are some thoughts. These are some recommendations that I would like to share as you consider the next steps to rolling out CBT in the Twin Island Republic. And I remain available for information as well as to support the adoption and use of the toolkits through perhaps some one-on-one trainings with communities as well as with private sector enterprises. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Charles, for that enlightening presentation. The thrust of the CTO towards CBT would really be instrumental in aiding national development in this area, and the tools identified would truly be useful to the stakeholders, so thank you. We will just now facilitate a very brief question and answer segment. We have space for about 2 questions, so if anyone in the audience has questions this morning, you can just click the raise hand button. How you do that is that you go to reactions and you can click the raise hand button. Do we have any questions this morning? So Amanda, we have a question here. How does the entrepreneur treat with insurance companies who are unwilling to provide coverage?
That is a very good question. Certainly a question that is hinged on your national context and insurance opportunities that may be available. So in some destinations, licensing of community tourism experiences or community-based tourism experiences is actually hinged on having insurance. And in other countries, the approach is more informal, where communities offer experiences, mostly day type experiences where the visitor can come for a few hours, half a day to participate in a particular activity. And based on the nature of the activity, insurance is not a requirement. So for example, for agritourism type activities where it may be a farm visit or a farm to table experience or a community tour, a walking tour of the community, where the level of risk is not as high as opposed to, wilderness hiking, for example. So I would have to say any support that could be provided or guidance by the ministry or the National Tourism Authority to that particular MSME. Any opportunities linked to licensing that allows some type of broad coverage. We have that best practice in Jamaica. So a national coverage for licensed tourism providers. And at the third tier, the enterprise seeking their own insurance, but they would have to abide by whatever criteria is established by the insurance provider. And unfortunately, it would have to be limiting the experiences to, soft adventure, for example, low risk, to ensure, you would fit within the parameters for insurance.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for your questions. We will now move on in our schedule today. So the next item is a presentation by another partner that has been intimately involved in developing the CBT toolkit. We invite Mr. Courtney Lindsay, Project Development Officer, Compete Caribbean Partnership Facility, to share with us on the theme CCPF CTO Toolkit Access and findings of the Euro Monitor Market Study. Mr. Lynn.
Hi. Okay. Morning, everyone. I am Courtney, and I'll just be presenting briefly on the consumer research that we conducted, and just basically running through some information about our main findings. Before I do that, okay, let me share my screen quickly. Could you confirm that you're seeing it? Hi, are you seeing? Okay, all right. So just to say quickly, this is our website, and this is where you can get all the information. Wayne this morning would have mentioned that we have calls coming up that may be of interest to you, technical assistance that we want to offer to firms, particularly MSMEs across the region. So we have other things coming up as well, and this is where you can find all the news and everything that is happening with Compete and all the information that we give out. In the context of this particular presentation, everything that we've spoken about, everything that Amanda mentioned in her presentation can be found here. So just come down to here and come over to community-based tourism and click on this link right here. And all the toolkit material are within this area on this page. Everything, everywhere you see one of these large green buttons is where you can download all the material in the toolkit that Amanda discussed, including the PowerPoint presentation, which I'm going to touch on in this presentation. Before I leave, let me just I'm trying to get this out of the way. Let me just ask that you subscribe to our newsletter, because you can get information coming out of Compete Caribbean as well. So you can just click this button here, or just scroll down here and provide your information and just submit. And that way you'll know what's happening at Compete. Okay, so moving into the presentation now. Are you still seeing the website, or are you now seeing a PowerPoint?
We're still seeing the website at this moment.
Okay. I think what I'll need to do then is, oh gosh, I'm really not very good with Zoom. So let me stop recording. No, let me stop sharing and start sharing again. Oh. Okay, so stop share and let me share the screen. Okay, so you're seeing it now.
Yes, we are.
Okay, all right, good. All right, sorry to hold up your time. Okay, so moving into it, like Wayne and Amanda said earlier, in 2019, we hired, we contracted Euromonitor International to conduct a consumer research in the US market. They're a very massive and reputable consulting firm based in London, and they do good work. And so we hired them to do this consumer research for us, which was basically to go into the US market and to find out the willingness to pay among Americans for Caribbean tourism goods and services. And we got some pretty surprising findings coming out of the research that it's really important for CBTs to know, because going forward, this will have implications for their business and at the national level as well in terms of tourism earnings, and eventually trickle down or up to national economic development. So what we found, what the study found, was that only 21% of the people they surveyed was familiar with community-based tourism, which is not surprising. A lot of people, they come to the Caribbean and they think just sitting on a beach in a beach chair. And so a lot of Americans don't know what community-based tourism is, which, you know, we start bad there. So it's something that we need to promote. So 79% of them, once they learned what CBTs were through this survey, they said they were willing to try. Now, when you deduce the amount of visitors we had in 2018, and we look at that 79% that is willing to try CBT, it meant that we would have lost out on 23 million visitors into the Caribbean and going into the community tourism space. And not only that, having potentially lost that amount of visitors, we continue to lose out on revenues, because as this presentation will show, we aren't charging them what they're willing to pay for products and services. So going right ahead again, the purpose of it really was to find out what visitors were willing to spend their money on, how much they were willing to spend, and how Caribbean MSMEs in the tourism space can take advantage of this. And the benefit of this is that it would help MSMEs refine and expand the price of their product offerings, so to encourage tourists to spend more. And like I said, this would then increase employment and revenues for people across sectors. So there is a component of intersectoral linkage in this as well, something we desperately need in the region to connect the different sectors and industries to tourism, so we can have that horizontal integration and benefit across sectors. Yes? Hello? Okay, I thought there was a question. All right, so so here we have what they did in the research was they brought down different 15 niche areas, tourism niche areas, and they focused on these, and they gave us some information of the number of businesses operating within the space in various countries, and also the level of community involvement, the potential for employment, and the interest among US visitors, and the capacity for the region to provide these services. So as you go through the report, which I'm encouraging you to do, you can go on the website and download it. It's a pretty lengthy document, so I can send this to Jamila as well, and she can share this with you if you just want a snapshot of it. And of course, we have tourism articles and newsletters coming out to Compete Caribbean as well that you can read, and a lot of them are based on this. So they focused on cultural and heritage tourism, save tourism, agro and food tourism, and cultural tourism, etc. And these are broken down into different categories or subcategories. So you had homestays, traditional cuisine, farm to table, volunteer and experience, and indigenous tourism that Amanda would have touched on. So again, look at this and look at the potential and look at how many people are involved in this sector and the capacity to earn money from it. And so that can help MSMEs determine whether or not this is a marketable area for them to go into. So it will tell you all of this. Okay, so also what they did was they broke down the different subcategories of tourism and community tourism into areas that we should prioritize, promote, develop, and redefine. Again, this was really interesting and made the study so worth it and great value for the $100,000 we paid for it. Because what it told us that we need, across the Caribbean, we need to prioritize local tourism. We need to prioritize especially food and beverage tourism, traditional cuisine, and farm to table. What this is saying that this is what tourists are most interested in, our food and our local gastronomy. Trinidad, where I've lived for 11 years, I know is a foodie country. And so, this is one country that I believe can really take advantage of this because of the plethora of cuisine that one can find just in Europe Square alone. So, this is definitely an area that Caribbean countries should take advantage of because visitors want to try our food, but not just to eat the food, they want to experience it on a more personal level. So they want to see how it's cooked, they want to see how it's planted, how it's harvested, how it's prepared, and all these kind of things that we can include in a package to sell to them, which I'll touch on again later, because that will also increase the revenue. They also touched on areas that we should promote internationally because there's benefit for the Caribbean, but there's low interest in visitors to take these up. So if we can increase their interest, then we can make more money from it. And these are homestays, volunteer tourism, school exchanges, cultural experiences, etc., and cultural immersion. So ministries of tourism need to probably find a way how to more promote this kind of tourism to increase interest among tourists. Those that visitors are highly interested in, but we haven't developed fully, are areas like heritage tourism, wildlife tourism, and festivals. So these are the things that we need to put more effort into because the US visitors are highly interested in these. And then finally, areas that we need to redefine because the interest among tourists are low, but the benefits to the Caribbean are high. And so, we need to strengthen these areas. And these are eco-lodges, farm tours, traditional health and wellness, and, indigenous tourism. So we need to work on redefining and bettering these offerings. So what are the main findings? Going along quickly. So like I said, the purpose was to find out the willingness to pay. So to give you one example, when it comes to traditional cuisine, the average price across the region is $10 US. Visitors are willing to pay up to $100 US for this experience, which means that we are losing out on $90 from visitors for traditional cuisine experiences. And not only that, half the respondents of the survey said that they were willing to pay more if the food is organically produced. And we see where that's a trend where we've been moving into for years now. So we know this, that people are moving toward organically produced foods because of the health benefits that it has, and trying not to eat fertilizers and hormones in animals and stuff like that. So farm to table, also is one of those areas we should take advantage of. Again, the majority, and note the operative term majority of the respondents said they were willing to pay up to $100 for the experience, but not just that, they were willing to pay more if the food is locally sourced and not imported. Why? Because visitors, they already jumped on a plane to travel to the Caribbean, which is a very polluting thing to do. So once they reach their destination, they really want to start offsetting that carbon footprint. So they want to eat locally produced food because they're environmentally conscious and want to reduce their activities' impact on the environment. So if the food is locally produced, they are willing to pay more for it because of that. It soothes their conscience, so to speak, because it's not imported. And also they like VIP options and access. So they like when things are made easy for them and, to be treated special. Food and beverage tours, again, most are willing to pay up to $300 for these activities. And the more I read this, the more I want to, leave the daily grind and move into the tourism space once you see the earning potential that comes out of it. So $300 for food and beverage tours, with 35% of respondents saying that they are willing to pay more for organic certification. So, like I said previously, if the food is organic, they'll pay more. But mostly what we find is that they are also, visitors are looking for economic sustainability. So if they know the price, if they know the percentage of what they're spending, a big percentage is going back to the community, then they'll spend even more money, because there's a level of benevolence that comes with community tourism where people want to give back. So we find, visitors, more and more research are showing that visitors are trying to move away from the coastline and these big international hotels owned by, investors abroad. And even in Jamaica, Spain owns a lot of our big resorts on the coastline. So people aren't trying to spend money that is going to just go back abroad. They want the money that they spend to remain in the community, that will go back to the people that they meet in the community. And so they're willing to spend more on that, which again shows the benefits of community tourism for national development and the fact that community tourism is the future. Okay, so I've said this already. Over half the respondents are willing to pay more if they know the percentage that goes back to the community. And farm tours, again, there's a willingness to pay that varies from $31 to $300. And the current price that we are charging them is from $20 to $150. And again, packaging is important. So the more you offer VIP options and the more you package these things, so you don't expect them to just leave their Airbnb or the Vista and travel to the farm themselves. If you come and pick them up, provide them with lunch, and you offer them a package deal and VIP option, then they're willing to pay more for it. Again, these are things that everybody who wants to move into the tourism space really should know. And these are the things that the consumer research shows. These are the things that, we've worked with Jamila and all the national tourism officials across the region to provide them with this training and provide them with the information that then they can share with community tourism enterprises. But they are deal breakers. So we ask that, when Your Monitor did the survey, we asked them what are some of the things that tourists don't want, and what are the things that would make them feel uncomfortable. And so the deal breakers for them are safety and hygiene. And this was 2019. Now imagine now with COVID how more important this is. So they want to see certificates showing that food standards are met. They want to feel safe in the community. So we need tour guides, because tourists walking around in a country that they don't know, in a community that they don't know, they'll feel safe for having community guides guiding them, so they don't go anywhere unsafe. And this is particularly important for countries like Jamaica, with, where other countries issue warnings all the time about the level of safety in these countries. So it's important for those countries that tend to have a higher crime rate, and especially if they want to bring tourism into certain communities, like especially Kingston. This is the same for Belize, if they want tourists in Belize City and those places that have unfortunately high crime rates. And again, they want food that is grown without chemicals, grown organically, sourced locally, and provide benefits to the community. So that's it, very brief. And thank you for this initiative. And it's very heartwarming to see where Trinidad is going with their tourism effort. And Compete Caribbean is here to provide technical assistance and support in whatever way we can. These things are important to know. We are moving back into, tourism is starting to pick back up again in Barbados. It's really good to see that they're almost at pre-pandemic levels. Like the tourism is really booming this year. And so that is really good news. And we expect this to be the case for other countries. But we need to focus on how to get tourists, not just to spend more, but to charge them more, knowing that they are willing to pay more. And the other things we need to be mindful of is that it's always quality over quantity, because having mass tourists to come, not just damages the environment, but disrupt community life. So how can we create that perfect balance of quality and quantity? And one of the ways to do that is to have, just to get each visitor to spend more money. So you don't need, that huge mass of visitor to come that in the end is not sustainable for our natural and built environment and for our cultural spaces. So that's it. Thank you very much. Back over to you, moderator.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lindsay, for these market research insights. They were truly food for thought. And as he mentioned, we encourage you to sign up to their newsletter if you would like to get more information. So we're going to facilitate about 2 questions this morning. So if anyone has questions for Mr. Lindsay, you can raise your hand and we will call on you. Do we have any questions from the audience? Okay, so seeing as we don't have any questions, we'll move along. So we will move on now to a presentation that will advise on the targeted tools for community tourism development. Mr. Mila Martin. Oh, I see we have a raised hand. Okay, so I'll pause for a second here.
Hi everyone. I found the data provided to be extremely relevant and useful. My question really, in looking at the overview of community-based tourism, and the fact that we are also trying our best to be inclusive where we promote domestic tourism along these lines. So while I see that it is extremely beneficial from a socioeconomic standpoint, that we have CBT products which range at 100 US, etc., I am wondering, how do we strike a balance where we have that level of interest, that level of support and buy-in from an international market, but at the same time promote an authentic product, which is also very much accessible to members within the community, or by extension, the larger domestic market.
Mr. Lindsay.
I'm sorry. Could you ask that question again? I somehow missed it. Give me a just run it by me again, please.
in essence, I'm wondering, how do we strike a balance in terms of promoting CB community-based tourism products, which have an appeal to an international audience at a high price point? But in other words, in designing products that accommodate this niche, how do we simultaneously make these same CBT products accessible for a local market and domestic consumption? Because it seems from the data that you have suggested, it's really socioeconomically beneficial for us to promote things like the traditional food tourism products, etc.
Yes.
But I'm also wondering from the other standpoint, if communities are moving forward and designing products at those average price points, do we, in other words, risk losing out on domestic clientele, or do we risk, in a way, creating a level of exclusion almost, where the local communities themselves may not be able to participate within this tourism experience?
I see what you're saying. You mean whether locals can afford? Yes, I see what you're saying. I don't know how, whether price differentiation would work. I'm not an expert on this aspect of it. I know that within the toolkit, there is a template on how to price your product. I also know that in Jamaica, the hotels in Jamaica have one rate for visitors coming from abroad, and then a local rate, which is almost like half the cost for people locally. So I'm not sure how you'd go about this. I don't know if Amanda has a better answer than I can give, because I'm not an expert on the business aspect of it, but I definitely see where you're going, that it would be important not to price out local people from taking advantage of this, because local, I don't know if there's such a thing as, local tourism in that sense, but it's important as well that people just trying to get to know their own country and will consume local goods and services. So I don't know if Jamila or Amanda can help me out with this particular answer.
Yes, certainly I can help you out. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Courtney, in that it is a best practice across several of our member countries to have a tiered price point for access and or entry to sites and attractions. For example, there is usually a local rate, a student rate, and then a regional rate. Usually CARICOM is pretty much, and they would verify based on your ID. And then there is the international rate. That's a best practice in Barbados. And it's not just sites and attractions. It could be here, what is very popular, Harrison's Cave, different price points, or a catamaran cruise. In Dominica, site visits to the Emerald Pool, which is, a national, sort of embedded in a national park. And I would encourage Trinidad to adopt the same approach. I also lived in Trinidad, and, I, being a Caribbean national, I wanted to experience a lot of the product, like, the Coroni Swamp and turtle watching at night. And from my recollection, there was pretty much one fee. And based on the regional best practice, it's usually there are guidelines set by the public sector or the government, but it is often left to at the enterprise level that the entity would decide, okay, my price is set at X, but I will offer a discount for students aged 14 and under. I will offer a discount for Caribbean nationals, and certainly for local residents, and proof of ID required. It's very, very easy, I think, to implement. And I would encourage the ministry to work with the private entities, even as you think of CBT, to encourage that best practice. So based on what Courtney said, we can optimize the opportunity for revenue, but not create a sort of hierarchy where, you know, the locals cannot afford to engage in the tourism product.
Thank you. That's an excellent review. I take the comment and I fully endorse what you've said.
Thank you, Ms. Meath.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for your questions, and thank you, facilitators, for your responses there. We really appreciated that. So we move on now to a presentation that will advise on the targeted tools for community tourism development. Ms. Jamila Martin of the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts will present on the CBT toolkit components. Jamila.
Thank you so very much, Candice, and good morning to everyone who is gathered or with us virtually. At this point, I'm just going to share my presentation with you so that we can all see it. And I'm going to focus the presentation on the community-based tourism toolkit. And the focus will look primarily at some of the key tools that are important when we speak about community tourism development. And the two tools that have been specially prepared for this particular area are the Tourism Asset Inventory, as you're seeing on your screen, and the CBT diagnostic tool. So just to get an idea of these two tools, the Asset Inventory tool is a specially prepared template that is going to allow communities to list their assets, anything that is found within their community that can help to develop tourism. That information goes into this tool, and we'll talk a little bit more about it in a little while. And the CBT diagnostic, which serves as a frame of reference to help your communities to assess, you know, some of your needs, what are your capabilities, as it relates to some key success factors that have been determined based on best practice and based on research. So at this point, I want to just launch a quick poll to get an idea of where our participants or viewers are in terms of the assets, what asset area you belong to. So we're going to launch the poll now, and we're just asking you to select which area you fall under. If you don't fall under any of those, you can select other. If you fall under more than one, you can select the one that most pertains to what you're involved in now. So you can quickly look through and select which asset area you belong to. So I'll just give you a few more seconds for that. Great, so I'm seeing quite a few under other. Other seems to be our biggest category currently. We have a few persons from the attractions as well. Okay, so primarily other and some attractions. So at this point, we're gonna start wrapping up to close off our poll. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna just end the poll at this point and just take a look at what we have in terms of our results. So most persons would have come out of the other. So that's business support agencies, government agencies, NGOs, etc. And then followed by persons from our sites and attractions. Thank you so very much for participating in the poll. I didn't share the results, but it's going to help us to kind of gauge where we are at with respect to the persons in the space. The community-based tourism development Tourism Asset Inventory tool is really a tool that focuses on 6 main assets. That is the accommodations, the attractions, services, experiences, experts, and infrastructure. We noted that under accommodations, the tool allows for the person completing it to identify the different types of accommodations that are available in the community, be it a B&B, be it a guest house, a hotel, even if it's a homestay, etc., or even if it's other. You can actually identify what types of accommodations are there. And the idea behind it is that you can quickly see the different range that are available in one particular place, and that's on your asset inventory listing. You can see the quality, you can see who owns it, and the end product is that by being able to see what you have, you can use it to begin to increase revenues due to CBT. And so since most of the persons would have fell after under attractions, the following slide is what's going to give us some more detail on how we can use it. So for instance, and this tourism asset inventory template would have been shared with you earlier as part of a package. So if you want, you can go to that link and you can view it, or you can look on the screen. And so on the screen, you're going to see a snapshot of what the template will look like. Now, you may be able to read the items, but I'm just going to go through it very briefly with you. In that area there in green, you're going to see, for instance, if you're an attraction, you have to enter specific details about one particular attraction. So the name, where it's located, things like the contact information for booking, your phone numbers, any social media or website pages you have, maybe if it's a female-owned facility or attraction, and also some comments about it. And the good thing about this is that the asset inventory tool comes with an instruction guide. So it's an Excel spreadsheet. So there is a sheet that has a guide in terms of how to fill it out. In total, when we look at all of the different 6 asset areas that we mentioned in the previous slides, you have 19 subtypes. So when I refer to subtypes, under each one, you can pick or choose, for instance, if you're an attraction, whether you're a festival and event, whether it's a cultural or heritage attraction, a natural attraction, or even if it's just a general attraction. So those are your subtypes. And then there are about 171 different ideas under all of these 6 types that you can choose from. So you don't have to guess. There are drop-down bars available for you to click on to be able to select what is most applicable to your case. And there's other if you cannot find your particular area. Now, the idea is that you have, or we have, a designated member from the community, whether it's a community-based tourism organization, a community-based organization, maybe somebody from a regional corporation, lead pack groups, who can help us to complete this asset inventory for a particular community. The ministry is going to provide support in completing it. We're going to be reaching out to you in terms of the completion of these for the different communities that have an interest in developing tourism. And we would be guiding you. So think about who would be a good person within your community to help. It could even be an individual who may be interested in tourism and wants to, assist in this particular area. So think about it while we're going through the presentation as to who can help us in this particular case. So I've just shared the results of the poll as it came up with us on the screen. So that's an area that you can look at. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. As we move on to the CBT diagnostic tool, now the diagnostic tool allows the community to be able to look at a frame, or they have a frame of reference, which allows them to assess whether the community is market ready as it relates to promoting community-based tourism. And it allows you to see if there are any gaps based on some key success factors. And these key success factors, as I mentioned before, have been tried and tested. They have been used within a lot of communities within our region, and they have been seen to be very effective for those that develop CBT or community-based tourism. It also allows you to discuss among yourselves what may be priorities for development, for project planning purposes, for funding, and you'll see how we can use it that way. There are 7 dimensions that are assessed for CBT development, and those are identified here on the screen, ranging from governance and leadership, community participation, access to resources, infrastructure and services, human resources, tourism assets, product development, and marketing. And the linkages back to our SDGs, as mentioned by my predecessor, Eddie, in terms of, for instance, decent work and economic growth. That's really an important area And so when you look at how the asset inventory, the questions that are asked by the diagnostic tool, you would see that it's really geared towards looking at how we could develop our HR within the communities at a managerial, operational level through certification and training. So when we look at, for instance, the diagnostic tool, as mentioned, it looks at 7 major dimensions. And if we look on the screen, this is just a snapshot of that diagnostic tool. It's also provided in the package that would have been shared with you earlier via a link. That diagnostic tool, the 7 areas are on the screen, and under each area, you would see the key success factors. And there are 28 key success factors in total. So if we look at community participation would look at areas such as access to, community interest, things such as knowledgeable community members, community consultation and engagement, protocols for visitors. And those things are important to ensure that your community is interested in participating in CBT, because you don't want to be developing CBT and really and truly persons in the area don't support it. You know, they would be definitely averse to travelers coming into the area, and you're going to feel that level of, you know, rejection of that whole community tourism thrust. So it's important to get them involved. So for that particular reason, we would have specific questions as part of that diagnostic tool. So here you would see on the screen under community participation, you would see there are particular questions there that are geared towards each of the areas. So for instance, community interest, there's a question: is there interest from community members to champion CBT activities? And so there are points assigned to the responses to those questions or that question. So if the answer is yes, and it meets that question, then you can add or give yourself 2 points. If it partially meets it, then you give yourself a point, and not at all 0. Things like, have you addressed any resistance from community members against CBT? Again, you grade yourself. There's a space as well for comments, etc. And so in filling it out, the idea is that you can allow, through a process of assessment, through discussion with community members, through prioritizing particular areas, you can allow yourself to complete this diagnostic tool with a view to eventually getting a total score at the end, because it allows, for that total score. And the Compete Caribbean has provided a scorecard, and based on the scorecard and the score you receive, you can ascertain whether you are CBT capable or CBT ready. And once you're CBT ready, it tells you, you have to be at a particular threshold to be considered CBT ready. So there's a guide as to how to apply the scores on the template that we have sent out, and which is also on Compete Caribbean's website, as mentioned by Courtney, and CTO's community-based tourism website, as mentioned by Amanda. So there are instructions, as mentioned, for this particular tool, and the instructions allow you to or identify things that you can do. You could organize a meeting with the business community leaders, as well as other persons, CBOs. You could go through the tool, you can capture comments, you can assign scores, you can identify where there are gaps, and each priority area for improvement can be discussed. You can assign particular actions to close those gaps. You can assign it, give it to particular persons, give particular timeframes by which you need to complete, and then you need to establish a process to move forward. Of course, the ministry is poised to assist in completing these, as well as our implementation arm, Tourism Trinidad Limited, and we would share with you, contact information for persons who can assist in this process. So at this time, we just want to take a quick look at CBT cluster development good practice. It was mentioned earlier that clustering is going to help in developing CBT, because you're going to have interconnected firms within a particular geographic location. Sometimes they may be out of the location, as mentioned by Amanda. There are different things that we could look at for clustering, but it allows for collaboration, and it allows the community to be able to compete on a larger scale. If you're if you're clustered together, the different businesses are working together, they are contributing towards the development of tourism through being part of the tourism value chain. And so a really, really good example that we have locally, and you would have noted that the CBT cluster development profile, or the profile rather, was presented for Lupino. That's one of our communities that currently has a profile up. We just had an opportunity to talk to Ms. Donna Mora. She's one of the more outgoing, in addition to other females in the community that have been working on CBT development. And she just had a few words to share with us. I'm going to share her words with us briefly.
I am Donna Mora. I'm the CEO of the Lupino Tourism Association Limited, and we manage the Lupino Chocolate Company. Our business has partnered with other local farmers by buying their cocoa and coffee, and we sell items from the ladies in our community as well. And through partnership with government agencies, we brought courses like Exports Center, basket weaving, community development skill program with burning, the Eye of Movement, House of Vetiver Craft. We have marketed our product through a very intense strategies. We have 4 Facebook pages, 2 Instagram pages, and TikTok videos. We have altered our business by selling our products online, Facebook, and IG. Recently, we conducted 2 successful virtual tours with Cedar Grove Primary School, and I must say that was really innovative. Over the years, we have worked with many government agencies to get the infrastructural work in our communities, and as a former president of the council, we have gotten access roads for farmers, street lights, and work with other government agencies as well, like Adopper River, Nehus, Community Development, to name a few, with many successes. We also got a grant from the Digicel Better Together initiative for $50,000 grant, where we were asked to do something for the community. We chose the community center because it was in dire need of repair. Thank you.
So we really appreciate that snippet from Ms. Mora. And just to bring everything together, what is interesting about Lupino, which is located in the central part of northern Trinidad, is that it's a family type atmosphere. There's a lot of trust. They have a history of working together. It's a close-knit community. There's quite a bit of collaboration there. We see a lot of the cocoa and coffee farmers are able to give raw products to those who are involved in chocolate making. They do butters, body butters, they do different nibs, cocoa nibs, etc., which are sold to visitors who come into the community. Women are very instrumental in this particular activity. There's a lot of capacity building and training, as mentioned by Ms. Mora, because they have linkages with NGOs, with the ministries, etc. And that helps to improve the quality of the product and develop their skills. So that's where our BSOs come in, our business support organizations and entities, as well as the fact that the community has a vision towards improving the village, and they have been using tourism in this regard. And so, as mentioned by Amanda, coming out of their community, we see the CBT initiatives or niches under culture and heritage and some agro-tourism. So at this point, I want to bring my presentation to a close, and I want to thank you for your attention, and I invite any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Jamila, for that presentation. So we had just one question here in the chat. So Marianne Hussein asked, who is collating this database for Trinidad and Tobago?
Thank you very much, Marianne. Very good question. What the ministry intends to do is within the next 3 or so months, we're going to be reaching out to persons who attended today's session, those who also would have attended a session we had in January, where we introduced a handbook, an enterprise development handbook, which is also available to all participants today. Persons who have an enterprise would learn how to develop their enterprise using that handbook. And we're going to be asking you if you would be interested in assisting us. So we're reaching out to our CBOs, our CBTs, community-based tourism organizations. We're reaching out to our regional corporations etc. And we're going to provide some guidelines as to how you can assist in completing the asset inventory, as well as how you can use the diagnostic tool within the next few months.
Thank you so much, Jamila, for that response. Because of time, we will move on to our final presenter for this morning. Our final presenter will speak on the Planetara Foundation, the Global Community Tourism Network. Please feel free to place any questions you may have in the chat box, and we may facilitate a brief Q&A session at the end. So we welcome Ms. Evie Ndlovu, Program Manager, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, Planetara, to share the international perspective on opportunities and resources available with us. Ms. Ndlovu?
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you so much to everybody for the amazing presentations and the information. I'm so excited to be here today representing Planetara and sharing a little bit more about the work that we do with communities and our global community tourism network. So I'll just share my presentation with everybody, and I hope you can all see it. Awesome. So thank you so much for having me again. My name is Evie Ndlovu, and I am the Programs Manager for Planetara in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. So I'm here representing Planetara on behalf of my colleague who represents the Caribbean and also South America, who unfortunately could not attend today. And I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit more about the work that we do in perspective. So much like all the conversations that I've been having today, I'm very excited to be sort of sharing our perspective on that. So that's myself. I'm currently based in Zambia, in Africa, and I'm so excited to be here today. So just a bit about Planetara. So we are a Canadian nonprofit. So we were founded in 2003 by Bruce Puntip, who's also known as the founder of G Adventures, but we are also a 501c3 in the United States. We have worked in community tourism enterprise development for over 13 years, and all our community partners have 100% of success in their businesses. So we're very much impact driven, and our mission is to use community tourism to uplift the lives. And we are spread out across the globe. So we have staff that is all across 6 countries. And together we have an combined experience of over 120 years in community tourism, enterprise development, in economics, in development, and also in global development. And more famously, we are known for previously over the last 4.5 years, we were working with 4 of our corporate partners in what we called Project 100, which was including 100 different community tourism enterprises into itineraries. So our definition of community tourism is very much like everybody else's, but when we view the communities that we work with through our model, we're talking about travel experiences that are owned, led, and run by communities. So this could be geographically, but it could also be in a way of life, such as nonprofits, cooperatives, and social enterprises as well. And when we look at community tourism, we use it as, you know, the breaking down of barriers to engage the very much underserved communities in very meaningful and life-changing ways. And our model is very simple. So we work with communities. So we identify communities. We provide training and grant funding to communities. We connect them to the market through our corporate partnerships. And also we mentor them through our peer-to-peer learning and our global community tourism network. And how we work with communities, we like to divide into, you know, 5 of the key parts of tourism or the needs in the tourism industry. Much like, you know, when travelers, you know, are traveling, people want handicrafts. So we partner up with communities that provide handicraft experiences or services. We also partner up with communities that provide tours and experiences. So like activity experiences like treks, walks, and hikes. We also partner up with accommodation providers, so like homestays and community-owned campsites and community-owned lodges. We partner up with meal services. So we'll partner up with communities that provide some form of meal or a meal experience. And finally, we'll also partner up with communities that provide a transportation service. So this could be like a taxi service or a local or city taxi or rickshaw company that we know that in the travel industry might be a very needed part of the travel industry. So just a few examples of the type of communities that we work with. So we'll work with a community like Solomar Eco Village that is in Iceland, which is predominantly farmland. So we have partnered up with the community there through training and grants and also market connection to allow these farmers, these rural farmers in Iceland, to turn their homes into an eco village where they can host travelers through our corporate partnership. So we provided a direct link to the market. And we also have activities, so much like Bike with Purpose, which is like a youth-led bicycle experience in Belize. So we partnered up with them through, the training in order to develop their tourism experience, and also the funding, and also a market connection through partnership with our corporate partners so that they can start receiving travelers into their experience. And another example can also be like a meal service, like Lusambuko Women's Group in Zimbabwe, which we partnered up through, again, training, funding, and also a market connection, where now this group of women now demonstrate a local traditional Zimbabwean meal to travelers, providing a lunch to travelers through our corporate partnerships as well. And as we work with communities and focus on our model, we start to see many ripple effects within communities. So much like, many that we've spoken about today, we have seen so much women's empowerment through our work, a lot of community development as communities start to take funding directly from the travel industry and develop themselves and their communities. We see communities take charge of their environmental protection and starting environmental policies and practices in order to protect themselves and their environment around their communities. And we also start to see increased capacity within communities. So communities have the willingness and the desire to learn and to grow their businesses and diversify their income. And pre-COVID, we looked a little bit different than we do now. Pre-COVID, we were working with 100 community tourism experiences in 56 countries through our Project 100, and we had 100% success rate. So all our community partners are still in operation up to date. Many are waiting for borders to reopen and for travel to kick back up, but they are ready and waiting to reopen. And between 2015 and 2019, through our work, $10 million was spent in communities. So this is $10 million that is coming directly from travelers, feeding money into communities through the services that they provide. And between those years as well, over 700,000 different travelers passed through our community partners. And our aspirational goals as we move on post-COVID is we want to see by 2030, at least 50 million travelers experiencing community tourism. And we want to see more money going into the community. So at least $1 billion needs to actually reach the hands of local communities. And we want to see over 3.5 million lives improved through community tourism as well. So through this effort, we developed what we call our Global Community Tourism Network. So this Global Community Tourism Network is really aimed at bridging the barrier between mainstream travel and also the community. So what we do that we want to break down those barriers by providing access to learning, peer-to-peer learning, training, the resources that communities need in order for them to be competitive and successful in the tourism industry. And more importantly, what we've done so much over the last few years is the partnership and the promotion of our community partners to allow them to receive more travelers and feed in more travelers through our partnerships with corporates. So our Global Community Tourism Network is built on 3 pillars. So it's our learning and training. So our learning and training is available. We have what we call our learning hub. So our learning hub has over 30 different topics that are ranging from enterprise development, marketing, financial management, responsible travel, child protection, all sorts of different learning topics that we think may be beneficial to communities, and over 50 downloadable resources. So we have access to a lot of resources that communities themselves can download and replicate in order for them to improve and expand their social impact as well as their profit margins in their enterprises. We also have an online community, which is currently a private Facebook group where we foster and facilitate peer-to-peer networking and learning. So we want to see communities from all around the world talking to each other, networking amongst from each other, learning from each other, and growing together as well. So our private Facebook group has a wide array of communication and networking opportunities, and also resources that are updated and posted there. Any opportunities that come that we feel may be beneficial to communities are all available on this Facebook group to communities that we work with. And again, the marketing and promotion, which is something we're very experienced in, where we work with communities and we work with our corporate partners to ensure that we can create a direct link from corporate partners bringing in their travelers or their tourists into the communities at the discretion of the communities as well, to boost and to bring more reliable and larger groups of travels or consistent groups of travelers to the communities that we work with. So like I said, our Learning Hub, it's a Google site. So you'll find we have resources that cover 30 different topics. We have 50 downloadable worksheets, templates, and videos that you can find on there. The resources that we have are available in English and Spanish, and in the next week or so, we will be launching in Vietnamese as well. We're continuously growing and looking for ways to translate into more languages. And then also it houses recorded webinar trainings that we continue to foster and build on a monthly basis for our network. And then as we've grown, our global community tourism network has grown as well. So we are currently working with 332 different community tourism enterprises in over 74 countries. So from 156 countries, we feel that we're almost quadrupled with the number of communities that we are working with. So that is a little bit about Planetera, the work that we do, our Learning Hub, our global community tourism network. And if you do have any questions or queries, or you have any communities that you feel might benefit from the resources that we offer, please do feel free to reach out to us on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube as Planetera Cares. We also do have our website at planetera.org. And if you would love to send an email, you can send at info@planetera.org. Yeah, so thank you. And I'm very happy to get any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. We really appreciated your insights on that information. So we will go into a brief Q&A time here, but before that, we would like to take a bit of a group photo, so to speak. So we just like to encourage everyone to please turn on your videos at this time, so we can take a brief group photo. It's so lovely to see everyone's faces this morning. Just giving a few more moments for persons to turn on their videos. Okay. All right, okay. And we will, maybe we can do a 3, 2, 1 cheese countdown. All right, let's go. 3, 2, 1. All right, let's do it one more time. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I think we've got it. So thank you all so much for playing along. And it was nice to put some faces to the names that we saw this morning. So if anyone has any questions for Ms. Nobu, you can raise your hands right now and we'll facilitate about 2 questions before we wrap up.
So this is Amanda. It's not a question, but just to share that CTO signed an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with Planetera to be able to derive benefits and inclusion as a member of the Global Community Tourism Network. So I guess commencing January 2022, we will launch a specific campaign to get communities in member countries to sign up to the network and to be able to access, the training, the benefits, and the market access opportunities. And that is why we were very pleased to invite Planetera to share on the network. And as we host national sensitization workshops, we will be including Planetera, and I'm so pleased, to connect with a sister all the way from South Africa. So it really shows that, we are in a small global community, and there is so much we can learn, even in terms of what is happening in other regions across the world. So thank you.
Thank you for that contribution, Ms. Charles. Are there any questions from the audience this morning? I believe did no youth left behind have a question in relation to this presentation?
Morning, good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? So I'm sitting on the camera here. Good morning. And behind me, I have about 25 members of our community-based organization. So everything that we are hearing, we are pleased because we kind of already in front doing these things. We have our data and stuff like that. One of the questions that we want to ask regarding security, because we are already creating an infrastructure for visitors. And we heard about the support, but we wanted to get an idea of the kind of support in terms of securing the visitors when we create all these wonderful platforms for them to come and experience beautiful Trinidad and Tobago. What kind of assistance would we be getting in security training? And when we say security, we're talking even about, equipping the workers, the members of the community-based organization to where security starts with us. Not just security from the police services and the external services, but how we could be more conscious, things to look for, things to be aware, how words we could use, trigger words to use and not to use to make the guests feel safe. And while we ask this question, I just want to remind Mr. Hamilton in a kind and that to include the Library Pitch Lake on the South region, because we're sitting here this morning, we heard Separia, we heard Point Forting, but we didn't hear Library. Right? So blessings again, and we thank the Ministry of Tourism for the support and this opportunity for being a part of this enlightening session. It was truly a blessing to each and every one of us.
Thank you so much for that question. We would like to invite Amanda Charles. If you could please give us some insights on the best practices for safety and security for sites.
Certainly very happy to share some regional best practices in terms of what other countries have been doing. Of course, we do believe though that national implementation is required and support that can be provided at the level of the Ministry of Tourism or the Trinidad and Tobago, tourism agency. So pretty much we have various concepts. One is community policing. We have some countries that have established tourism police units, and in other words, persons are trained to then train community members on safety and security, interpretation, some history, geography, etc. And then you create an environment for community members to be sort of watchdogs, for want of a better word, but they support the efforts of law enforcement by ensuring that, when visitors come into their community, they are aware of the importance of safety and security and can help to safeguard the visitor. So that is one concept. The other, which I have seen, I think even on some level at the national level in Trinidad, the youth ambassadors being trained as, I think they're called, again, it differs by country, but these young people, and again, it's a really great opportunity for employment for young persons, but young persons would be trained again as tourism custodians. And in so doing, they would serve a role both for information on tourism sites and attractions. They would support safety and security by keeping a watchful eye. And thirdly, serve as point persons for visitors, as well as, tour operators, etc. In some countries, for example, in the Bahamas and Belize, again, these persons are at strategic points. I believe Trinidad had a youth ambassador or tourism ambassador program that would that would see young persons at key sites and attractions, including some of the beach facilities, and as well as in Port of Spain, that would then serve that role of, keeping a watchful eye, but also for information purposes as it relates to visitors. So the recommendation could be that, as we think of communities to participate in this holistic experience, that young persons are identified from each region that can be trained on safety and security broadly, but also general information as well. And that would facilitate them playing an active role in supporting onward sensitizations in their communities, but also supporting the safety and security of visitors. And it is a way that then you don't necessarily have law enforcement presence, or that the law enforcement is supported by these tourism ambassadors. I would just also like to share, of course, it is important when we think of communities that are selected, CTO and Compete, we support the market ready concept, and market readiness not only deals with the availability of a key site or attraction, but safeguards for visitors. You want to ensure that the community where you are recommending and or sending persons, particularly non-nationals, that they are safe. So that is really the first criteria, and then to sort of develop a community network that can support safety and security and the provisioning of information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Charles, for your contributions. We just have a few additional contributions from Jamila Martin from the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts.
So in support of Ms. Charles's comments, definitely the ministry acknowledges the importance of the safety and security of its visitors to Trinidad and Tobago. We know that we owe our visitors a duty of care. And so in line with the question asked by No Youth Left Behind, our sub-policy for community-based tourism has an entire section geared towards safety and security. And within it, it acknowledges that there are going to be specific activities or actions implemented to ensure the safety of persons who go into these communities to avoid harassment or any sort of serious crimes against our visitors. Of course, we need buy-in from the different communities as to how best to implement the actions, because different communities may have different ideas towards the approach. But generally, for instance, in the city of Port Spain, as I mentioned by Amanda, we have seen the visitor guides work quite well. These are young persons who serve as ambassadors, who direct our visitors into safer areas of the city, and they also keep an eye out for them. We work in harmony with TTPS as well. So thank you for that question, and we look forward to working with you all in implementing safety and security in the communities.
We would like to thank Jamila for that contribution, and we would also like to thank all of you for your questions this morning. They were really excellent to listen to and to listen to the responses. Please note that any questions that were not answered today will be responded to directly via email. However, if you have any additional questions, you can contact us at policy@tourism.gov.tt. That is policy@tourism.gov.tt, and we will respond there. That email will also be placed in the chat box as well, so you can have it. So today we welcome your feedback. Therefore, we have placed a link in the chat box to an evaluation form for today's session. Please complete this form now, and you can submit it to us so that we can have your feedback on the session today. Your feedback is really essential in order for us to know how to grow and change for the future. So the following next steps have been identified as work towards all these valuable tools. Number one, examine 5 tools using the links provided and determines which ones you intend to use in your business, within your organization, or in your community group. 2, you can share and discuss the tools with other members of your community group, organization, or other businesses in the community. You can please contact us if you require any assistance with accessing or using any of the tools presented today. A list of support personnel and their contacts will be provided via email after this session. Select a representative from your organization and community group who would be most suitable for the ministry to liaise with in completing the tourism asset inventory tool. We will be contacting you to obtain this information. The ministry will also be contacting persons or groups that attended the session over the next 3 months to determine what assistance is required in using the tools. So the ministry would like to take this opportunity to thank all of our special guests, presenters, and you, our viewing audience, for your presence in this session today. It really signals your commitment as we seek to refine our CBT tools, products, and experiences in a strategic and sustainable manner. So we hope everyone has a great afternoon. Thank you for your attendance today, and please be safe.